economic productivity, and public service delivery. As AI begins to shape welfare systems, health delivery, education, urban governance, and digital platforms, the key question before us is not whether AI will be adopted, but who gets to shape the access to this infrastructure on which this AI is built. The insights from the Hyderabad and Chennai pre-summit events organized by us revealed something consistent, which today's panel is going to focus on. Our panel reframes AI infrastructure as civic infrastructure, similarly in importance to the digital public infrastructure, shaping participation, agency, and public value at population scale. We have an exceptional set of voices representing the full AI stack. Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, an IAS officer, Special Chief Secretary to the Government of Telangana. Mr. P.J. Narayanan, the Chair of Research Symposium here at AI Impact Summit and the former Director of IIIT Hyderabad. Ms. Amanda Brock, the CEO of Open UK. Mr. Osama Manzar, the founder of Digital Empowerment Foundation. Okay, he's yet to arrive. Ms. Prachi Bhatia, the Public Policy Manager at Meta. And Mr. Rakesh Duburu, who is the founder of Faculty and who will also be moderating the session. I request the panelists to please come forward for a small photo. Yes. Sure, we could have this at the end of the session. Sure. I now request the moderator to spearhead. I think it's 2 minutes, he's just walking. So, sure. So I think we could begin with the session.
Sure. Thanks, Anushka. As you know, the AI will need a whole of society approach. It's not just a technology problem, and which is why we've gathered the stellar panel for you today, who represent different strands of the AI world that we're looking at, from government, from academia, from technology companies, from somebody who's working at the grassroots with people, and somebody who's championing open source. So we wish to have these perspectives because, like I said, it's not a single solution that will help us go beyond talk and rhetoric, but actually implementable solutions. I'll start with Jayesh Ranjanji, who is Special Chief Secretary for Government of Telangana. Sir, you've been for so many years the IT Secretary and also at the forefront of IT in the state. From a state implementation lens, what do you think is the hardest part in democratizing AI? Is it building the infrastructure? Is it governing it? Or is it ensuring that it actually gets used meaningfully and equitably?
Thank you. Greetings to fellow panelists. Greetings to everyone in the audience. So I'll share an actual experience to answer your question. See, many of you would know that when Digital India started as a flagship program way back in 2014, one of the important components was called BharatNet. You lay optic fiber cable, you connect all the villages. So in my state of Telangana, we took a decision that will go a step further, which is a decision which the government of India has also taken now. But this decision was taken way back in 2014 in Telangana, that will connect every household as well. And we had one advantage at that time, that trenches were dug to connect water pipelines to every village. And we felt that this is a great opportunity. In the same trench, let us put the fiber duct as well. You save on so much of cost, because if you actually see BharatNet, about 40-50% of the costs just go for digging the trenches, filling them up. So here you have ready-made trenches. Then we were getting this saving. We felt that we should now connect household. We took a saturation approach, like you go to a village, cover all the homes, then go to the next village, go to the third village. So after the program started, and we would have covered maybe 100 odd villages. One of the feedback which we got was that, so let us say you are a small farmer in a remote village. You went to bed today, and tomorrow morning you woke up, someone told, hey, there is broadband at your doorstep. We did not find people jumping with joy and rushing out and investing in a smartphone or a tab, which kind of surprised us. We are spending so much of time and effort and resources to provide connectivity, but it's not causing any enthusiasm at all. So I think this is what taught us a very big lesson. As the phrase says, I mean, as the proverb says, you can take the horse to water, but what else do you need to do? So this was the big lesson, that just creating infrastructure is not enough. How do you get your buy-in? And what we found was that it's not that they are not buying a smartphone or a tab because they can't afford it. Many of you may not know this, but Telangana has the highest per capita income in the entire country. So it's not that we are a languishing state where people can't afford to buy a phone or anything. And so the discovery was something different. The discovery was that it's largely a mindset issues. I mean, many of the people who are in remote villages obviously have not gone to colleges, don't speak English. So it's a mindset thing कि हमारी हमसे नहीं होगा ये. I mean that standard हमसे ना हो पाएगा. That the OTT meme कि तुमसे नहीं हो पाएगा, हमसे नहीं हो पाएगा. So I have not studied in English. I have not studied at all, for that matter of fact. I don't have much familiarity with these gadgets, etc. So then two solutions came out. I don't know what are your follow-up questions, but in my anxiety, I'm answering your next question also. So two solutions came out. One solution was that let us assist them in mastering this technology. So even if I have some mental block that I can't use it, can I find someone in the village who can guide me in using it? So we used our digital kiosks, which are there in every village, which are called Me Seva centers, very imaginatively. Wherever there was a shortage of Me Seva centers, we created new ones. And in the new ones, almost 1,000 of them, we encourage women from the local community to become an entrepreneur. So that again is a very great, very satisfying outcome, that women are now leading at the cutting edge these kind of revolutions. But the other more important thought was that even if I assist you, I will know that, okay, I can pay some utilities using this facility, I can get some services, but can it help me in handling certain things which are very, very foundational, very fundamental? And we discovered that if you are able to solve some of their most pressing problems before their eyes using technology, the buy-in happens instantly. If you can show to them that, see, here is a problem, let us say agriculture. Most of the rural livelihoods depend upon agriculture, as we know. If you tell them that, see, this is a pest issue which eats half your crops every year, your father faced the same thing, his father faced the same thing, you also lose so much of opportunity because of the pest attack. Please welcome fellow panelist Osama Banzar, and please come, please take our pictures. नहीं नहीं, he has to go to another hall now. खत्म कर लीजिए. आगे आगे आए या यहाँ पे करें? Please take the picture and share also with us. So just to continue, so in agriculture, for example, there will be hundreds of challenges which a small farmer, a marginal farmer face. But if you show to him that here is a technology which can help you come out of this problem, which you perhaps would have never imagined will happen in your lifetime, you will see amazing kind of response. Even people with whom we won't remotely even associate technology or high tech, you will see them getting converted. So this is the most difficult part, but in my opinion, this has to be done. Unless you convince them that technology can help you improve your life, we won't have buy-in at all. Infrastructure and all is not the more difficult part.
Yeah, thank you, Jayesh garu. I'll next go to PJ Narayan garu. So you've been at the helm of a renowned technology institute in the country. So what specific role do you see both universities and research institutions playing in democratizing the AI stack? I mean, there are a lot of things to the AI stack, but which specific things do you think the role of universities is critical, universities and research in?
Thank you for inviting me to this panel. So AI world, at least in the last 3, 4, 5 years, have changed so much. It is, it got upended. Otherwise, we are all doing AI for many years, and what is today they will call the old-fashioned AI, not the ones that with these foundational models and large models and so on. And that has changed the landscape for everybody, especially for universities, and not just Indian universities, the global universities, because all the big exciting things are happening in companies like Google, Meta, or the OpenAI, the very big players. Because one of the things, of course, the resource like both compute and data. Data, I mean, many of these, you can see these companies are primarily internet companies, so they have data, and then because they are also again internet companies, they have compute for other purposes, and they are able to repurpose it and so on. And this is for for uh, for academia world over. Even the MITs and Stanfords are feeling a little bit behind. They are not leading the race. And in India, these are our investment in these things always lags. Now India is trying to create infrastructure, etc. So that infrastructure, compute infrastructure, is very important. I mean, there is often cliche that told that the data is the new oil. I believe that is true. I mean, there is a way it can be justified. If you want to cook an AI dish, you need all the ingredients, but in the end, you need to heat it. The oil or the fuel required to heat it is maybe the data, but the component that releases the heat from the fuel is the compute. So without that, you cannot do much, and that's where that's one of the points where academia is at a disadvantage today. The India AI, I've been talking to India AI people also saying that they should create probably an academic compute cloud just for academia to be able to, do their work. And the second part of infrastructure, I mean, nobody would have thought of data as an infrastructure until maybe 5 years ago or 8 years ago. Today, data, availability of data, you can have all the compute you want, but if you don't have the data, you don't have the algorithms, then you can't do anything with it. So in 10 years ago, all these companies, like Google, they all became open source. In the 25 years ago or 30 years ago, the cultural war was open source versus non-open source. And the Microsoft or the closed source proprietary software and hardware versus open source hardware. Today, everybody is open source because the real value is provided by the data and the other resources that they have. The code itself is of low value in this whole equation. And of course, there are companies like Meta which has taken a position that they will be open weight models, and that helps a lot, but still there are other restrictions and on the usage, etc. But that's where the academia is at a disadvantage, and India, on one hand, with 1.4 billion people in the world, India can be a very strong player in the data space if we can play it right. And that's where we need to put our heads together, and typically governments directly or indirectly control or influence a huge amount of data that is produced in the country, and which is of value to generating AI solution, whether it's civic data from the cities, data from the phone, data from the people, etc. So that I think there need to be a movement, like the open source movement, that kind of ran out of steam because everybody is open source, and it alone is not enough. Open data movement, that's very hard. At least mandate that some of the data, some of the critical things will be available, not just for academia, the startups, the companies to use. So solution relevant to these users will emerge out of it.
Thank you, Narayan garu. I'll now go to Prachi. How do big tech companies like Meta envision a personalized agentic AI transforming the lives of individuals in the global south? I know we've spoken about, I'm sure this entire expo has shown a lot of solutions toward this aspect, but how does big tech see it? And can you also let us know a couple of steps that companies are taking towards realizing this goal?
Sure, thanks so much, Rakesh, and thank you so much for partnering with us for a series of discussions that have happened in the last couple of months, and thanks to everybody for coming here. I think these topics have been very important. Like Sir mentioned, data is definitely data, compute, and scaling. All of these are like critical components of infrastructure now, which we will need to make the AI vision possible. Specifically, when you ask about the vision at Meta, our vision is to bring personal super intelligence to everyone and everywhere. So inclusion is a very important part of our mission. And we believe the personal super intelligence can happen by way of AI glasses, which can actually allow your AI to interact with you, to hear what you hear, to see what you see. And we feel AI glasses can actually accomplish that mission. We also have all of our glasses now launched in India, except for RBM displays. You can go to the Meta Pavilion, take a look at the glasses, and it has actually already started making a lot of impact, specifically for the blind and the low vision community. People are using it to make their day-to-day life possible. Today, I really saw a very interesting use case. A blind person actually walked inside the Bharat Mandapam Summit wearing the glasses, and there is an app called Be My Eyes app, which actually connects a blind person to a sighted volunteer. And using that help, the person could navigate how the person actually reached the expo area. So very small real life examples making a huge difference in a life, like in life of so many people. And specifically when we launched this in India, we also added couple of additional languages in addition to English. It's available in Hindi, Kannada and Tamil, and we will obviously add more languages to it. We are also piloting UPI payments using the glasses. So using your AI glasses, you could actually make payments. So a lot of innovation is happening there. And also just to talk about how data is important, and I think you rightly mentioned open source has definitely been a very important pillar of this, and government's recent initiative of AI Kosh is a perfect example of how public-private partnerships can work. Just yesterday, we contributed a very large data set, 12 billion token with 4 million pairs to the government's open source library, which is in 10 different Indian languages, which can actually support applications in agriculture, healthcare, and education. So open sourcing data sets is critical, also which are relevant to the applications that a country needs. So this is a great example. One more new model that I would like to talk about that Meta has built. This is just one of the many examples that we have is omnilingual ASR model. It actually helps in converting more than 1,500 languages, and it covers more than 500 low resource languages and a bunch of Indian languages. And even if you have like one audio sample, you can extend the model to cover that language. So a lot of innovation is happening in that area, and I think more needs to be done. Public, private, and academic partnerships probably are one right way to solve for the issue that Sir rightly mentioned. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thanks, Prachi. This is a good segue to go to Amanda. Amanda, as you know, open source is often treated as a technical choice, you know, whether you want to open or close it. But as you know, from a policy and legal standpoint, open infrastructure is deemed to be central. But why do you think it is so central in democratizing AI? And not just as, you know, something that comes from an ideological lens, but more importantly as something that is very, very central to democratization.
Thank you very much for having me along this afternoon. I feel like a little bit of a fraud because I don't know enough about the Global South to be sitting on a panel. So maybe you will all tell me through the course of the afternoon various things that I will learn from. When we talk about open source and we frame it in the context of today's conversation, we've mentioned civic tech, we've mentioned digital public good, and one of the things I think 2026 will be remembered for is the year of the ontology, big word, definitions. And I think this year we're seeing people start to really focus on having consistent meaning across conversations. So we hear the term sovereignty a lot. India wants sovereignty, France wants sovereignty, the UK wants sovereignty. Everybody's demanding it, but nobody's explaining what they mean by it in the digital context. And there's lots of different extremes. It can be simply localizing globally available technology that you can build on so that it respects your language, it respects your culture, and it's secure. And I think that I would call that soft sovereignty, and I think that's probably a very sensible approach, all the way through to it has to be created here to be sovereign. And when we look at infrastructure, I talk a lot to politicians, and their understanding of technology varies. And I talk about pizza. Everybody likes pizza, right? Anybody not like pizza? I can't eat it, I'm allergic, but everybody likes pizza. And when you go to a pizza restaurant, what you talk about are the toppings. You don't talk about the base usually because you don't have much choice. And if you are looking at the technology pizza, the toppings are like AI, the cloud, the internet, machine learning, and that's what you go and you sit in the restaurant and you talk about. You don't really think about the base. And in our digital infrastructure, the base, the pizza base, is open source. And it's the dull, boring stuff, right? It's the plumber's tools and the plumbing. But if you take that base of your pizza away, what have you got? Sloppy mess, right? So what we need is a firm base, a solid base that everybody knows is going to be there, they can rely on. And open source today provides that base. Now, I may slightly disagree on why it's been successful. When I started working in open source, there were a lot of jokes about open source, and the punchline was always Microsoft. I can't tell those anymore because Microsoft today is one of the biggest contributors to open source. I'm not funny, so it's just as well I can't tell them really. And they've shifted, and they've shifted not because they think it's for the greater good. They've shifted because it makes business sense. And it makes business sense because the cloud, the platforms, all of our infrastructure is built on this open source. And if you want to be engaged with those, if you want to run a business, a cloud business, to be a hyperscaler, you have to use that open source. So we've seen this shift towards open source of necessity. And a lot of that has come from technical changes, you know, things like GitHub suddenly becoming so popular. You've got 25 million people on GitHub in this country. You know, you're one of the biggest in the world. And that has enabled collaboration, and it's enabled people to take the technology and bring it into their business without getting approval from risk professionals. They don't need a lawyer to sign a contract because it's on a standard license. They don't need financial approval. And that's kind of shifted the landscape of business. Now, for me, you now have infrastructure you can rely on that's open, that's collaboratively built, that everybody else is using. Why pay for it twice? You know, we take it and make it your own. And what we need is to see, I think Prime Minister Modi said access for all when he opened the French summit. And I think that access for all comes through open source. Now, when we look at AI, I agree that there is going to be a moment, and if I knew what that moment was, I'd be rich. There will be a moment in my crystal ball looking into the future where something will shift and we will see adoption at scale of open source AI. And that is what I think, as an outsider looking in, you need in the global south. But I also think we need it in Scotland, where I'm from, right? We're all in the same position. So I realize there are some particular things, there's the languages. You know, I didn't grow up speaking English, I grew up speaking Scots, which is a dialect, and it's only just been recognized last year as a language. You know, when I was in high school or junior school, they used to hit us if we spoke in it with a, you know, a ruler. So I get that you have a culture that is very meaningful to you and that you want to see properly represented within the tools you're using, and you should have that. But I think you probably underestimate the stage that we're at in places like the UK in terms of our sophistication. And I think that humans are humans the world over, and we really have a lot of the same challenges, and there's a lot of room for us to collaborate globally around the future of that technology and build things together.
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. That kind of perfectly sums up to go to the next panelist. Osama, you've had more than 2 decades of experience in last mile digital empowerment. So we've seen how mobiles, how internet has transformed, and you've been at the forefront of that work. So I want to understand, and maybe for the benefit of the audience here, so what do you think AI inclusion will mean? So we've been talking about financial inclusion, digital inclusion, but what do you think AI inclusion means for the grassroots, beyond, you know, devices, beyond connectivity?
Okay, after 2 decades of experience, I only started hating inclusion, not because it ends up doing exclusion more than inclusion. I'll just narrate one very living story of every one of us. For example, all of us started, social media came to us, right? And social media came to us as an interactive media, which allowed all of us to generate content, publish content, create content. And after 15, 20 years, what has started happening? We became content and we started our behavior and our choices. We became content of control and narrate and all that, right? Then you started seeing those content which you are pushed to see, on all the social media. So what I'm actually trying to say when we say inclusion, actually the purpose is that more people use it so that we can use you. So today all the devices is meant in such a way that we are the content for the device. When we are using, actually we are being used. Right? We are being used, our behavior. So all the likes that we did, okay, this is what we like. So push this kind of content. Okay, I like red, so push red content. I like, violent content, push violent content. So your friends only creating content, but your only violent content coming to you, or love content coming to you, or whatever, content coming to you. So this is how the devices come to us and take our socio-behavioral habits of the user. Now that is how, and that same data is now being fed to AI to create another kind of system to give you to get included. So is this inclusion for what? So when you are saying financial inclusion, do you want to include me or my money in the bank, right? Or my choices to withdraw or not withdraw? So, and the reason why it's very interesting panel is because here we are talking AI more from the perspective of media consumption, media habits and all those things is even more, So it's very interesting that we see AI as a data crunching machine, because without data, like somebody says that without data, AI is nothing, or data is the oil. Now, what data are you feeding to the AI machine? What kind of data? Because if you want to replicate my habit is 57-year-old, and now you want to just maybe record. Now AI is saying that even if you record 1 hour of my video, they can create a avatar of mine almost talking like me. So how can you just in 1 hour of content, data collecting and then making the machine learning and create your, your like of content, and you say, oh, this guy is talking like Osama. Then you feed the content on that. This is what you have to speak. This is what you have to do. So I don't know how we are going, but the point is that data point for the technology creators, which are only few. Who is creating? Who is pushing these technologies? Who is pushing these AIs of the world or the machine learnings of the world and all that? I mean, and why are they pushing it? Are they trying to use us or replace us? Then why should we be replaced? Should human intelligence be replaced by artificial intelligence? I don't know. I mean, so my point is that in this entire system, I think human in the loop is the most important part as a loop of trust, and also the literacy of human beings to the last mile that I'm saying is that are we making them aware of data literacy or not? Are we, before data collecting from them or using their data or giving them any data? So that is the point that is most important and which is not happening. We are first pushing the machine and then we are making them experiment. In this experimentation, we are collecting data and then we are perhaps asking about the ethicality or all that. So there is no system of what you call as front feeding, there is no advanced feeding of the information, only feedbacking system, no feed, feed fronting system, there is only feedbacking system. You give the system, you learn from it, and you then take control, and then that is how you go. So we need to figure out as a governance system, as a policy system, is that what kind of policy we create where the machines are not going to use the population or the people before the consent and before the ethical participation from their side. That's what I'm actually trying to say.
Thanks, Susama. Thanks for grounding that. I'll because we have about 15 minutes. I'll ask the panelists to kind of, give their suggestions and closing remarks in about 2 to 3 minutes. First, Jayesh Garu, for a long time, I think
Hello.
governments have played the role of
हेलो
infrastructure creators
हाँ
to
जी सर
level the playing field or provide access equitably.
हाँ वही मैं
So
देख रहा हूँ सर
there
पता
has
नहीं
also
यहाँ
been
पे तो
demands on
बिल्कुल
a couple of
अचानक ही मैं अटक ही
roundtables.
गया
A
रुक
couple
जाओ
of
मैं
roundtables, we've heard that
ये
people
चल रहा था
wanted
या पता
governments
नहीं
also to be market makers.
Throw up a challenge, a hackathon, invite solution providers to create something bespoke. But obviously they require data. And we are aware about some of the points which others mentioned. Data could be available, but there is a lack of trust in making the data available. There's always a fear that some thing beyond my knowledge or my scope will be done using that data. So we have created a data exchange and a data management framework. So for agriculture, we were able to get 19 data sets, many of them maintained by the government, but many others, many data sets maintained by others also, who once they understood the logic of putting together this exchange, were willing to come forward and share their data as well. Like what Prachi mentioned about Facebook Meta contributing to so much of data. And more than putting all the data at one place as an exchange, making it machine readable, making it interoperable, the bigger contribution was to create a data management framework. Who has access to that data? Under what circumstances will you be permitted to use that data? If you're going to benefit commercially from that data, how will you share that benefit with the people from where the data has originated? So that's something which has stood the test of time. This agriculture data exchange, ADEX as it is called, has been live for more than two and a half years now, and many users, many insurance companies, banking companies, people who provide crop loans, etc., have used it for bringing more efficiency, for improving their outreach to their stakeholders. Looking at the success of this agriculture data exchange, which is called ADEX, we have now expanded it to cover 30 odd verticals and expanded it as a TDEX, Telangana Data Exchange. So data sets of various kinds, mobility data, weather data, price data, tax data, health data, whatever databases are available have all been used, and the management framework remains the same. Like who is a contributor into that data exchange, who is a user, what is the responsibility of each of them, who monitors, who has an oversight of that data exchange. So this is something which I felt I should share with everyone. But to answer your question in a very, very quick way, the opportunity to create market for small players was introduced way back in 2014. In Telangana, when we became a new state, we came up with a policy to promote innovation and entrepreneurship. And in those days, Hyderabad was not a very thriving, not a very dynamic hub for innovation. But whoever were there, I still remember that conversation that happened actually in Triple IT, where Professor P. Jain was the director. Those 50, 60 odd startups who were present in Hyderabad. We asked them to tell what help do they require from the government. And I mean, just as an aside, I can share this with you. The obvious answer was that if you stay away from us, that is the biggest help. But when we asked what are your problems, do you really think that the government can't help you with anything? One problem which they mentioned was that finding the first customer is very challenging. We may have a great idea, we may have a great solution, but because we don't have any track record, finding the first person is challenging, and many of us just face the valley of death because we could not get any customers. So way back in 2014, when we brought out the innovation and startup policy, we mentioned this, that the government will be your first customer. I'm guaranteeing this to you. And over the last 12 years or so, I don't have precise number, but I'm very sure that the use cases which we have taken from entrepreneurs, innovators, which is of relevance to the government, the numbers would be close to 100, if not more. So that is a role that we have played in encouraging people who are just beginning their journey. There is a process. We do have a system of evaluating whether the solution that you are providing, is it relevant to us or not. But things have worked out well.
Thanks, Yashgaru. Professor Vijayan, Triple IT Hyderabad has been at the forefront of doing a lot of work on Indic languages. So there is always a tussle between spending resources for frontier research versus contextual applications which might solve an immediate social problem.
So how do you think university resources should be balanced between these two?
I think university, like anybody in the society, should solve the problems around them that they face or people around them face. At the same time, universities are obviously universal entity, but I think if you can't solve the problems of your neighborhood, then you are not doing your job. So you mentioned the Indian languages, the translation between Indian languages, speech, both speech understanding and speech production, both all have been major activities in IIIT from 2000 onwards, and the work that we did formed the backbone, strong research backbone of the Bhashini system today, which has really changed a lot. I mean, now you have an API, you can call and send a speech signal in one language and ask it to translate and give us a speech signal in another language, and it works. And I mean, that really enabled that, Jayesh Ranjan Garu said, the people not finding what is the use, if it's in English, now they can talk to this phone in Telugu or whatever their local language, and we are in the data collection framework. Again, local can be very local also. So we with Samagra and other open source entities, IIIT has been leading an effort to collect cultural and other data from villages, every village in Telangana or Andhra Pradesh, etc. And the goal was to use 100,000 student volunteers to go to their local places, collect speech or other data, and then create a model sometime later. And we have fallen short of hundreds of thousands, but we have done 60,000 or something, which is a big feat by itself. So I think we need to, India is a large country, and every few kilometers, everything changes. Food changes, language changes, everything changes. And we have to solve that problem. And that offers challenges that maybe other countries don't have. How to create very local solution, yet it's part of the bigger solution. Because even our languages, there are 22 or whatever languages, but there are two major families of languages, and we do have at least there are research which says the translation system among the Indo-Aryan languages can share data and other things together. You don't have to think of Gujarati as separate from Hindi or separate from Marathi. So together they can do things. So these are solutions or challenges offered only by India, and we should solve those problems. And first, yes.
Thanks, Professor P. Jain. Prachi, and what policy approaches does Meta recommend to ensure that regulation supports responsible innovation but also avoids unnecessary commitments, all of them leading to large-scale AI adoption that benefits both commons and individuals? What specific policy advice does Meta recommend?
Sure, thanks. Thanks so much, Rakesh. I think I'm going to address a couple of points that were made earlier as well. Specifically talking from the perspective of the policies that government needs to do, I think firstly India is doing a great job. Regulating the use case of technology is probably one of the best approaches that the world can follow, because you can't have technology specific regulation. When we are talking about policy or regulation, it really needs to focus on what are the outcomes, what are the harms we are trying to address. So unlike Europe, India is definitely showing a example to the world. How do we strike a balance between regulation, innovation, and adoption? I think a lot was discussed on data. Definitely, we need good governance principles which minimize the risk of issues with the data. Security of data is paramount. We need transparency on how data is shared. Investment in privacy enhancing technologies is also very critical. But at the same time, we need all of these governance frameworks to enable access to data, but not just restrict it, for the very fact that Professor just mentioned. We want a lot of these applications definitely to work for us, to work for India. And I don't think digital tools is just limited to media. I think it's much more. It's beyond that. Today, just taking an example of how a farmer can just use a WhatsApp to communicate with anybody, improve the crop performance. And I think the same is also coming with AI. Sir gave an example of how AI is actually changing the way in which Indian agriculture is going to operate in the future. So I think the opportunity opportunity is great. So we definitely need rules, policies, which actually don't restrict data sharing, but enable all the applications, the upcoming technology to also work for global south, because language is a big problem. If you have all of these tools built in languages which don't support local communities, then how will people use it? So if you really need to reach the last mile, if you want the benefits to go to every citizen in the country, accessibility and inclusion, in my view, are critical, and policy supporting that would be very important.
Thank you, Prachi. Amanda, one of the constant concerns regarding open is about while open in name, it should not be closed in practice, especially on the licensing and compliance burdens. So how do you think we ensure that AI does not get there?
AI does not.
Get there.
Okay.
When we say, how do we prevent complexity around compliance and licensing?
There's been a lot of discussion today that in other panels that I've been on that sort of brings us to this point in the afternoon. It's been quite a long day, right? I don't know if everybody else has had quite a long day, but we've had a lot of conversation. And we've talked about regulation and laws. And while I was listening to you all, I realized it's 30 years since I started working in tech. I started working in tech in 1996. I was an internet and a .com lawyer. And I was listening to what you were saying. And we built laws that were suitable for selling online because that's what we were doing. You know, in the 90s and the early noughties, that's what we were doing. We had no concept of social media. And we made laws that we thought worked well, but they didn't shift and change because lawmaking is a slow process and it's an expensive process and a difficult process. Policy isn't much easier. And what we see is something, I don't know if you'll know this term, regulatory capture, policy capture, where it's possible for those with money to influence where it goes. And sometimes they'll encourage you to make more regulation so that only they can comply with it because they need resources to do that. So sometimes it's better not to have regulation, or it also won't deliver what it is you want to achieve. I'm sorry, I haven't met everybody before, but one of you talked about water and the flow right at the beginning. I used to live in Amsterdam. I don't know if you all know Amsterdam, but it's a city built on canals. And the Dutch had a challenge. They had a challenge of flooding. And there's a famous story of a little Dutch boy who puts his finger in a hole in the wall to hold the force of the sea and the water overflowing. And clearly that's doomed to fail in the end. So what the Dutch did instead was they worked with the water. And they created this canal system that they could control that powers their agricultural environment, allows them to be in Europe one of the best at growing things because they have all this water. So they found a way of making it work by sort of working with it. They do have an element of control, but they created that control in harmony with the ecosystem rather than pushing control onto it. And I think when we look at AI and technology, we want it to serve us. We don't want to be its servants. And when I look back on my 30-year career, I do not believe that politicians and regulators would have made the decisions they made if they knew where it was going. And the difference 30 years later is we know a lot more, right? We know where we may be going, and we could guess and bet on some of those things happening. So what we need is to learn from the recent past and the decisions that we all make. And I think we have to understand that it's more about practicalities and what happens than whether you have a law or policy, right? And we have to work at ensuring we spend the money in the right way to build the landscape that actually enables to have what we need. And that what we need is this access for all. And I think we need access for all in two ways. We need it for the end users to be able to access the technology so that everybody has access to the internet. But we also need it in order that we can innovate. And if you want to shift India so that you're not just one of the biggest contributors to AI, but you become a leader that's powerful and has influence in the long term, then you need these practical steps to be taken. And China is a great example in this. 7, 8 years ago, they set up an open source first policy and they built the infrastructure like they have a national foundation called Open Atom. And if you look at the steps they took, it's all public, you can see some of the things that will need to be done. I feel like I'm eating into your time, so I'm going to hand you the mic.
It's only fitting that I come to you last, Osama. Can you share with us a use case or an example that you have come across, especially around community-centered AI, in whether it's education, health, or any other area that you felt could be something worth emulating?
Yeah, what I learned is that technology and the medium with which it all started, like English was the medium of all the technologies that came to. And I remember about from 20, 25 years back when we were doing digital literacy in the ground, most of those people were learning on their own and not the course that we were putting. You know, for example, one simple thing, I went to one of the centers and the kid was opening YouTube or something, and he did 4 buttons, and I said, how did you open this? I remember through the sign of the language or the keyboard what website to open and not the curriculum that you have given, right? And most of the computers, one person will be holding a mouse, another person will be keyboard, and the third person will say, ye wala kholo, you know, open this one and open this one and all that. So what I actually figured out that peer learning, peer curriculum or peer way of adoption is very, very important. And India, for some reason, I mean, for many, many years, you know, we were pushing technology and they were adopting in their own way. For example, WhatsApp got so much penetrated only because of audio-visual nature and because of its voice nature and the video nature and the symbol nature. You know, because we knew how to do a symbol way of communication. We knew how to do oral communication. So that is how we got it. But in that manner, what happens is that we are also getting their data without really letting them know in the way they would understand. So what is very important is that, you know, can we have with them, by them, and from them, rather than we push everything, you know, in the name of higher literacy or higher education and all that. And that's what whether we call it digital public infrastructure or we call it because digital itself is a language of its own, you know. But how do we really put them into the way they can adapt it and they can be used with awareness of rights, not with the awareness of only being a consumer. That's the very, very important, and that is where we need to push the technology in a manner that it becomes with them and rather. Like for example, Jayesh sir was talking about data exchanges and all that, you know. Does that is it understandable by the public whose data is there? You know, it's very important, or public representative or something like that. So we need to be very, very inclusive in terms of policy making, in terms of rules and regulation and all that, while we are pushing the technology or technological devices.
Thank you, the panelists, for your wonderful insights. Anushka.
Thank you for that extremely rich discussion, panelists. We now move to the second segment of this session, one that demonstrates that democratizing AI infrastructure, what it looks like in practice. Now, in partnership with AI Kosh, as part of this broader AI Commons vision, Faculty and Meta supported the AI for All Hackathon, which focused on tools that make public data sets AI ready. This took place in multiple rounds, and the response addressed data usability and multilingual access. I now request Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Ms. Prachi Bhatia, and Mr. Rakesh Dubudu to present the prizes. First place goes to Intelligent Document Processing by CDAC Splash. Never mind, we can just move on to the next place. Second place, all right. Correct. Yeah. Right. The second place goes to BizNova by Code Plus. And the third place goes to FAP Next Gen by AI for Health. All right. Thank you so much, participants. Yes.
This was online. Yes. This was not today. Yes. Code files. Third two.